Hey, it's Daryl at 10 Foot Truck, Good Attitude Services. Right now I'm in my SUV, doing food delivery apps and maybe a roadie, but I got some phone calls for the truck, but I haven't gone out today, maybe tomorrow. I was just thinking because people always ask, what my cost is or fee for particular, transporting furniture or, removals or any of that kind of stuff. And I used to do hourly, and then I realized it wasn't until I started watching because I used to just exclusively do furniture pickup and delivery, mostly from stores and a lot from Craigslist buyouts. So that was my main bread and butter. But then I started looking at junk removal videos on YouTube, and I started realizing that it's much more lucrative. So I started to advertise for that because I like the idea of junk removal as opposed to furniture delivery or moving. Because in the moving industry, everything's kind of charged. Well, it used to be way back in the day. It was charged by weight and by mileage and all that. But recently, I think it was 1-2 men in a truck, or one of those franchises started doing things hourly, which I think people like that. And so it's kind of across the board, I think, in most of the states and most moving companies, at least the ones I know of locally, charge a specific amount per hour, like $125 an hour, or whatever it is, for two guys in a truck. Unfortunately, that can run into, seems to me like, you're just, when you're basing your work on hourly, like $50 an hour, $100 an hour, you seem to be losing out on. I don't really like charging. I did it for so many years, and I realized how much I was losing out on, because that's treating it like a job, and it really is a service. And a service, to me, really should not be charged per hour. It should be an estimate. That's why I like junk removal. They charge, like, they'll figure out how much cubic feet they have in their truck, and if they fill that truck, it's this much per load. And they've kind of figured that formula out. And a lot of, and each city and each area is different depending on the cost of the dump and all that. So I kind of like that idea, and I think I'm going to start kind of treating because I get a lot of calls still for delivery. Craigslist is a big deal now. People buying, furniture. It's much more reasonable to buy furniture that's used. Why buy, spend so much money on expensive stuff when you can furnish your apartment for a fairly reasonable price, for way cheaper than if you're going to go buy it at a furniture store. So people are going with Craigslist, especially when you're a person that moves around a lot for work. I've run into a lot of people like that. They tend to just sell off all their stuff, take their clothes, move to the new city, find an apartment, and then immediately go on Craigslist and buy beds and furniture for way cheaper than having to move all that stuff. That's very costly, or having to go buy it brand new. And if you're just going to be there temporarily, or you don't really, if you're in an apartment, you're really not going to be there for pretty much, you're not, most of the time, you're not going to be in an apartment permanently. So you want to just get stuff that you could use. And you can get fairly decent stuff on Craigslist for buyout. So I've been doing a lot of that. And I noticed that, I get really good customers, but when I'm charging per hour, a lot of times it doesn't add up too much, by the end of the job, when I'm sweating, there's a lot of work going upstairs and that. And if I would just charge them per truck, for like a proportion of the truck, just a flat fee, it'd work out more. For instance, if I was charged, say, a full truckload 300, or say 400, and then if I split it up into little sections, say, well, that's one piece of furniture, that's starting out at a base price of like $125. If I just say that's for one item, it's $125. For two items, it's $150, or figure it out depending on the items, how much it's going to fill your truck. Like if it's a full, say they're buying out a full house of stuff. Say they're buying, a dining room table, 2 couches, chairs, bookshelves. I've done all that at one buyout. I've done those. That's a full truckload, and that, to me, it should be a minimum of 300, depending on how far they're going. For the truck size of mine, which is pretty much a little bit bigger than a van, bigger than a cargo van, but it's like, it's like my truck's probably the equivalent cubic feet of one of those Sprinter vans, the big long Sprinter vans. It's like about that cubic feet, if you can see that, picture that in your mind. So it's not a giant moving truck, but it's a box truck. So if you have like a 14-foot box truck or 20-foot box truck, of course that's going to be way more, And usually in the case of that, if you're getting into bigger moving trucks, you're not really going to be doing these Craigslist deliveries or and you might be doing furniture deliveries for like where you're filling up the whole truck for a store and doing, and then having a route, doing a logistics route and delivering like each one for like a particular price. When I worked at a furniture store, and we're talking back in the 80s, no, it wasn't the 80s, sorry, 1993, I worked in a furniture store as a delivery driver, and I worked in the warehouse, and we would do we'd work in the warehouse building the furniture and getting that organized, and then organizing the routes, and then at the, towards the evening, we would load up the truck, before the evening, and then we would do all our deliveries because of traffic and stuff. I was in a major city. So we would do most of and people were home from work and all that. So we would do all our deliveries in the evening, and then we'd finish the day out. And back then, I'm not totally sure, but because it's a long, long time ago. That was, so I don't know if I remember exactly. I thought it was each item was $77. Maybe I'm wrong. It was somewhere within 70 range to 80 range per item. And that was a long time ago. So now 125 per item would actually be fairly cheap. Considering inflation and gas prices since those days. But I remember we would fill up it was probably a 16-foot truck with mostly sofas, because it was the furniture place that I worked for actually made custom sofas and custom couches and custom chairs. So they made the factory was down below, and then we had the storefront on top, and so the majority of people were there to buy those custom couches because they're really nice. So most of the time we fill up, I don't know how many sofas especially like we went out on a Saturday, we do deliveries the whole day. Because you could stand those sofas up in a 16-footer. Not on my truck, it's too short for that, but you could stand each one up. So you could have, I don't know, like 10, 12 couches, at least 10 sofas I think we would fit in there. It's at times, I think $70 or $77 per sofa. So we could do a full run in not even 8 hours, maybe in 6 hours, maybe because usually each delivery would be like a half an hour, somewhere a little longer, depending on how to get it in the house. I mean, we had to walk up 10 flights without an elevator because the building was so old. So those would take longer, and we would get tips on top of that. But for the most part, we would do $700 to $800 a day on a run. And then when I started my own sofa delivery company years back, and I was in the early 90s, I was doing around $77 or $80 per sofa. And I had a bigger truck. I had a 26-foot truck, so I would do like $1,000 in a day. But then of course you have to figure out the rental cost or whatever, or if you're renting the truck, or the fuel. So I think, back then if it was that much, I think today minimum 125. I see some companies that are doing 200, 225 per item. So that's kind of how I'm going to start doing it, because I was doing the hourly thing, and it never works out. It just seems to be like, if you're going to go out in your truck and you have to maintain it, you have to cover the fuel costs, all these different things that we don't think about until it happens. Replacing your tires, that's $1,000 on a truck like mine. Replacing the transmission is $3,000. These things can happen, so you have to have that money. And in order to accumulate that kind of money, since you're not working a full time, may not start out full time, ultimately you may get it to where it's full time, but you really don't want to treat it as a job. You want to treat it as a service and have flat fees, and depending on the mileage. So you have to figure out what's going to work out for you. And I think for me, it's going to be, probably 125 per item. And then, like I said, a full truckload, 300, 350, somewhere around there, depending on the mileage. And then depending on the weights of the items, you do an estimate. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, because I had a customer call and I gave him a flat fee. We're going to see what he says, as far as the flat fee. I know everybody's looking for a discount, but when you're a service, that's one thing that you have over having a job, is that as a service you can dictate the prices you want. Of course, you want to go too high. You want to kind of have a middle ground, figure out your market, and then have that middle ground, middle price, or maybe a little bit higher to to garner up business. But I don't really want to take my truck out for less than 100. I mean, $125. I really don't want to go anywhere. If I go out and do a job, I want to come back with 300. I feel better if I come back with 300, 400, $500 on a job. I've done $1,000 days with my truck, not lately, but it can be done. I've done jobs that were, if you bid them right, yeah, you can make 1,000. I mean, it's not going to be every day. It's not going to be all the time. That's the thing, is you really have to. And I've kind of in a new area now, so I'm figuring out this market value here. In the other areas I was living, in my old areas that I was doing this business, I could charge a lot more because, there was more opportunity depending on the demand. So anyway, that's kind of what I want to talk about, because right now things have slowed down a bit, and so I'm having a lot of time to think when I'm doing these other app deliveries. I'm trying to go out and do these food deliveries just to fill in the time that I'm thinking about what I'm going to do in spring, and when I start launching and getting more into marketing. I have to really set my prices and stick with those prices, and and just really have my value. It's value, whatever's valuable. I have to value myself as well as I have to value the customer. It has to be a win-win situation. I can't devalue myself and go out there and burn my truck up and then wish that, what did I do? And I've done that before. I have to have enough to cover the costs of operating that truck. And I don't think most people are not going to realize that, because when they're dealing with these big corporations or these big companies that run, for instance, like 1-800 Truck Junk, or one of these bigger operations like UPS or FedEx, the reason why they're so reasonable and cheap is because to ship stuff with companies like that is because they have all that capital, all that all that huge organization, and they can lose a lot of money and still recuperate. Whereas a small person like me or you or whoever has one truck and that's all they got and they're operating, they can't bounce back. I mean, if something happens, they have to shut down and they have to fix the truck or whatever. So that's why it's good to have multiple streams of incomes, like I'm doing with apps and other things. So that's something to think about, is you really have to be bringing in, when you're going out there, you're bringing in enough money that if something happens, you can do, you can have the oil changes, you can do your maintenance, you can pay for all your licensing fees and all these things. So it's better to keep your prices at a higher, point than have to be, because I made the mistake of going out when they had a big recession in 2008. I was doing moving labor, and I dropped my prices so low, it was embarrassing. And then when I thought about it, it's like, but I was getting desperate, trying to accumulate work, and things were so slow during that time. Which the more I thought about it, I was like, why am I charging almost minimum wage, say, and then you're working the whole week, because people are just hiring you because it's cheap, and you're busting your ass, and then you got nothing to show for it at the end of the week. Whereas if you could have done one job and made the same amount of money and not burned your car up or burned your truck up. So that's kind of what I look at. I think people have to realize that you're a service. You could charge whatever you want, whatever you value yourself. Of course, it has to be within reason if you're going to get jobs, but you can throw a price out there and they either take it or leave it. But when you're going out and doing that job, you're going to come back with a decent amount of money that you can cover your costs, and that's the main thing. And that's about it. Hopefully I'll get, right now it's pretty slow I'm not getting any deliveries here. I might go back and do some more marketing and figuring out prices, and that's what's good on slow time, is kind of try to design what you want for when things start to pick up, is have that ready. I've never really been good at that kind of stuff, like notebook writing, getting my goals down. I'm trying to do that lately because I think that helps. Anyway, have a good day out there, all you movers, shakers, chunk haulers, or whatever you do to make money. It's all good. Everything's good. I've done all kinds of work. I've done janitorial. I've done work for garbage companies. I've done everything. It's all work. It's all a way to make a living. There's nothing better or worse about any. It's just work. And but I'm always trying to find something that I feel enjoyable. And, of course, it's a job, or it's a work, not a job, but it's work. So you have to. It's not going to be always fun, but I try to do things that I like physical labor. I like moving things around. I like the physical part of it. I like the customer service part. So I do enjoy it. So some people probably can't stand that kind of stuff. So whatever you enjoy or whatever you think you can do to make a living, it's all good with me. So this is 10-foot truck, good attitude services, signing out. Thank you.